Are we ready for the live stream?
We started right now.
Okay, welcome everyone. zkWarsaw number 19. This is a local zk meetup series that's been around for now, what, like 2 years, right? And it's so cool to see you all here and available not only to discuss zk topics but also related ones. Thanks so much to our sponsors, the ESP and Vilea and others. And I would like to present something that myself I've been working on for the last almost year now, which is a combination of zk and more technologies. So who of you has heard about real-time proving, RTP? Like, what is real-time proving? Anyone? This has been a debate for a while now, and I think just yesterday, a fellow base startup founder actually suggested a formalization that real-time proving be the ability for a prover to come up with a proof for a given EVM or even Ethereum block within less than 200 milliseconds. Now, the idea behind real-time proving is that in this future world where we'd be able to create proofs this quickly, we would be able to actually achieve composability across off-chain systems that rely on those proofs. And today I would like to talk to you a little bit more about how we can approximate real-time proving today and not in many years' time. So this is T1, my new startup, where we are working on bringing about real-time proving by a combination of TEEs, Trusted Execution Environments, AVS, or the like, crypto economic security, and what we call bespoke ZKP, requiring zero-knowledge proofs in a way that does not make it impossible for the system to actually achieve this super low latency. My co-founder John is the guy behind Secret Network, previously a TE company, and myself, I used to work for Scroll in the past, and so I kind of bring the L2 and infra component. Now, why are we doing this? We are doing this because Ethereum has this vision of becoming the world computer, and part of becoming the world computer involves being able to reach many people on the planet. Now, Ethereum has had this idea of what people started calling the rollup-centric scaling, the rollup-centric scaling roadmap, which basically implies that execution be divided into many rollups off-chain, and every now and then the base layer, the Ethereum mainnet, be convinced about those other off-chain systems' state. Traditionally via an optimistic proof, optimism arbitrum, or a zero-knowledge proof, Scroll linear zk sync. This resulted in Ethereum being able to go from maybe 13 transactions a second of throughput to around 10 times or 20 times that, like 300 plus. However, this isn't what I would call scaling just yet, because it also introduced silos. It introduced those individual fragments of the ecosystem where you can go and transact or like use your favorite dApps if they happen to be deployed there and if there happens to be enough liquidity for the dApp to actually be usable, such as liquidity providers on a swap. And so this is something that is still an open issue. Now, there's two clusters I'd like to highlight. The rollups that seem to be the furthest, with Arbitrum recently reaching a total value locked of $20 billion. And those guys are using fraud proofs, are using an optimistic approach which requires a 7-day withdrawal delay. So if you want to take your favorite coin and sell it on Arbitrum for ETH, and then use this ETH somewhere else in Arbitrum, you will, at least by default, need to wait 7 days. Like, how is that scaling? How is that a world computer? These guys are a bit better. These are zero-knowledge rollups. They currently are delayed by something on the order of hours. If you go really aggressive and you have a lot of money to spend, you can maybe go down to something like half an hour. Still, you need to wait for 1 hour, which is just a no-go for many people who are used to the Web 2 order of magnitude of delays. And so this is what we call settlement time. And this long settlement time is what real-time proving shortens. Real-time proving is something that happens very fast, maybe less than 200 ms. And so you are able to actually enshrine it, embed it in the protocol such that you be able to trade your coin on Rollup A and use the result to get a leverage on Rollup B and use the result to buy something on Rollup C. And this is what I think is the missing component to scaling Ethereum. Now, how can we introduce RTP today? Well, T1 enters the picture. With T1, the idea is basically to have this combination of a TEE, AVS, and zkP that we will come to discuss in detail. And with this combination, we are able to actually go back to Ethereum within a sub-Ethereum slot delay. So whatever happens on T1, we can basically sign off on, and the next Ethereum block will contain T1's most recent state. On top of that, in an approach like that, you can envision running nodes that look into those slower rollups, follow those rollups, and something like T1 is able to sign off using its real-time proving capacity on such a third-party rollup or partner rollup state. And so this enables a DApp developer to actually tap into pre-existing users or liquidity. And so yeah, we are now in this spectrum where we have those 7 days of delay. This is like the most common but slowest, hours and 12 seconds. Now the next step would be, of course, like sub-second or like enshrined in Ethereum. But yeah, this is far away as it seems now. So what's next? You can envision a world where every third-party rollup be real-time proved by some protocol like T1 or some other architecture of this sort. Like this, you can think about in this like kind of backwards compatible fashion. This is, I think, very much in the spirit of Ethereum's composability, that you'll be able to connect to existing systems. And so this is the vision for T1, and by now several other teams are working on bringing this about as well. So stay tuned. Now, how can we achieve this if zk is so slow and Vilea and everyone is working on speeding them up, and they have been, and there's so many like VC investments going into this, and it's still hours? Well, this is where this combination of a defense in-depth approach becomes important. And so in the T1 construction, we lean on hardware security, TEEs, for a very short-lived but very cheap security, or very cheap proofs of integrity. Specifically in our case, we use this for an encrypted mempool and as an additional security against malicious other elements in this puzzle. On top of this, we add AVS. This is the second puzzle piece. AVS is restaked assets. So it's crypto economic security where someone might become an operator, convince other people, hey guys, commit your assets to my operations, because I promise you I will be fulfilling my duties and making sure that services that I'm supporting will be generating yield, like will be paying me for those duties, and I will be forwarding them back to you. But if I do not fulfill my duties, in particular, if I cheat, and in this situation this involves actually tricking the TEE as well, so it's not as trivial to cheat, then I will have my portion of this crypto economic security taken away from me and given to the party that lost value in this scenario. Does this ring a bell with everyone? AVS, crypto economic security? So if it does, you might ask yourselves, well, so if I go to eigenlayer.com or whatever it is, and I look up the AVSs, I see like people maybe reach $1 billion stake or so. How can you possibly secure a 20 billion Arbitrum follower node with 1 billion stake? Obviously what could happen is that someone takes over this $1 billion stake, manages to break into the TEs, and then steals the 20 billion, loses 1 billion, and is 19 in the surplus, right? So you shouldn't do that. However, you don't need to treat this as a ceiling. Instead, you can have zk enter the picture, and this is what we mean by bespoke zk, in such a way that you observe what sort of value is at risk in your system, in this case T1, and you basically have an accumulator, like a sum over whatever it is that a malicious AVS operator might be able to steal. And as you approach the level where you no longer feel comfortable, and here you need to actually take into consideration what exact consensus you are running in the AVS. It might not be the full restake, but less actually. Once you approach that, you can ramp up the fees on your L2 to discourage people, unless they really want to, from transacting and increasing the sum even more. And you can ramp up the reward for people who provide a zk proof of the current state of your system. And you can do it without actually ever halting the underlying system, the underlying T1 rollup, right? Because you continue operating, you continue accumulating value and encouraging people more. Now, you only need to halt the system if there were indeed a single transaction that would exceed this AVS security budget. So I don't expect this to happen often at all. And so this way you can actually create this cryptographic security, like line of defense that hopefully never needs to be waited for. Does this make sense? Any questions so far?
No.
Okay, so now the deep dive. If you didn't have questions, you probably should have questions now. I would like to walk you through what happens when a user Alice wants to transact on in this construction that we call T1 here. Now, we even have a laser pointer. Great. You can't see it. So, imagine you are Alice, one of the users on the left, and you have some funds. The first thing you do is you deposit those funds into what we call the canonical bridge contract on Ethereum. And this is a critical piece of infrastructure. This is pretty much everything you care about, because you don't care about all of those off-chain components. You only care about what this Ethereum contract will deem as acceptable. That is what you trust, and you don't want to expand those trust assumptions. So Alice deposits her funds with the intention of seeing them on T1. Next, she changes her RPC to the L2, and she goes to a website such as a DEX running on T1 that allows her to encrypt some subset of fields in her newly crafted transaction to the public key of a private key shared by TE executors, these guys. Now, does this make sense? So, this way, such a partially encrypted transaction is not legible by anyone but for the interior of the enclave participating in this network.
She's doing a swap with T1, right? Or like
Yes.
Okay.
Let's say she's doing a swap on T1, yes.
Okay.
So for instance, so we can't encrypt everything because we want to be able to prevent DDoS. So for instance, the gas limit or the base fee, like maximum base fee, maximum total fee, and so on, need to be public, and the recipient and the sender balance. But the important things that are relevant for like sandwich attack, MEV sort of scenarios, like what tokens am I trading, and what is the direction of the trade, and what is the limit at which I will trade, and which is the slippage tolerance that I'm willing to opt into, might very well be encrypted. Now, this partially encrypted transaction makes its way to not the TE network, but to a separate network that we call the sequencing AVS. And this is a separate AVS, a separate cryptoeconomically secured network of kind of dumb nodes with low hardware requirements and therefore a high expected decentralization ratio, whose only task is to sort those partially encrypted transactions into blocks, into partially encrypted blocks, like into bundles of transactions, not real blocks in the Ethereum meaning, but candidates for blocks to be executed.
So like espresso or?
Yeah, we are, so actually our current favorite for the consensus is Espresso Hotshot. Yes, running in a 1 second block time.
So you're talking about batches?
Yeah, you can call them batches, yeah. Or maybe bundles, like pre-execution. So these guys sequence those transactions into like block-like entities and pass on those blocks together with a proof of the sequencing consensus, which is the thing that someone might later use on L1, on Ethereum, to prove that someone on this AVS misbehaved and have the stake slashed, right? So it's important that we don't forget the sequencing consensus proof. And they pass this on to another AVS, which now is actually an AVS consisting of beefy nodes that in particular are all TEE enabled. And those nodes share probably an ephemeral and often rotated private key that they can use to actually decrypt those partially encrypted fields. And this enables them to run the execution and come up with a block.
So there is a single secret key on the right.
So right now this is our design, that there be a single secret key that be cycled, like that be rotated. Yes.
How do you want to rotate the key?
Well, we can derive new keys in a, like, for instance, in some periodic fashion. And the idea here is that we only want to rely on TEE for privacy for a short time.
Yeah. I mean, sharing this private key alone seems like a non-trivial task.
Yeah, that's true.
What if one of the TEs is broken?
Yes, exactly. That's why we care about limiting liveness, because if one of the participants here is compromised, all of the mempool encryption is compromised. Yeah. So ideally, what you would conceive is some sort of threshold decryption or MPC. Like this is something in our research column.
Do you use TSS? Threshold signature scheme?
Yeah, so I think threshold decryption would be even better than MPC. Yes, that would be.
I missed the first 20 minutes. I was late. So here you're talking about like decentralized sequencer with off-chain storage, something like this.
We are talking about an L2 that is able to go back to L1 in less than 12 seconds with hot finality.
Yeah, but you are using the hotshot.
Yeah.
So this is L2 with rotating sequencing. That's what you mean?
Yeah.
Oh.
Exactly.
Oh, we already have this implemented, but maybe you can fork our stuff already, but
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
What's the company? What's the project?
Metis Foundation.
Metis. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Is your aim to prevent MEV or to have private transactions?
No, the aim is to this is kind of a nice to have. Like the main goal for having the TEE is to make it harder for these guys to cheat and less likely and to
Yeah,
have a more robust.
For the decryption part of it.
Yeah, and for the decryption, it's to prevent MEV. Yeah. So we actually are also considering allowing like a certain half-life for privacy for like some fancy use cases such as shared private state based use cases.
So, sorry, like
but
the,
this is not the focus yet.
the encryption of the transaction from Alice,
Yeah.
it's done on the client side, because otherwise there would be still space to extract the MEV.
Exactly, it's done by the front end.
Right.
Yes, so this is kind of trivial. I mean, the non-trivial bit, the tricky bit is how do you know to which pub key to encrypt if you rotate the pub key, the private keys, right? That's a bit annoying.
Is it somewhere where time lock encryption could maybe work better?
Maybe, although as far as I understand, like with TEs, you can't have a notion of time anyway. So you kinda,
Yeah, I was thinking about
Yeah.
DRAM network as like the
Yeah.
concept of time lock and the encryption, so not really the line of the, let's say, it's more like the output of a chain in this particular
Mhm.
case that kind of gives you the eventual private key. So.
yeah. Yeah, I'd be interested in investigating this one actually.
In previous slide you said you're gonna increase the fees. Like what fees exactly? The execution, priority, bridge? What is that?
So ideally, we would have a multi-dimensional fee market where the fee for convincing the L1. So by the way, I'm not done yet. There's like 17 more steps. But where convincing the L1 about finality becomes more expensive. So we want to basically discourage people, especially who are inserting high-value transactions into the network, from transacting. Like they should be the ones paying for it's kind of like insurance. You can think about it as an insurance, where you need to pay for having highly valued transactions find their way into your block space. Because you need, like AVS is directly insurance, right? But in this case, it's kind of pre-funding this preemptive zkP situation.
So in regards of sequencers, how many is the baseline? How many sequencers you will have like at the first time?
Well, of course, one. Okay, like we
I mean,
just
you-
launched DevNet, so it's early, but
You already have some sort of rotation, right? So
Yeah.
you can have one.
Yeah.
That's
So-
maybe two.
Espresso claim they be able to actually run a sequencing AVS of this sort with Arbitrum level block times, 200 something milliseconds, with
1,000 nodes.
1,000 or 10,000, I don't recall now.
1,000.
1,000, yeah. So it's like this, wow, this is really impressive.
Yeah,
like
but
this is,
They told me about 10 megabytes per second like traffic, but it sounds slightly too much. Well, I don't know.
so if they can do 1K at 200 milliseconds, But I think if you go with a 1 second block time, which seems plenty, you can rest assured it's gonna be good enough. Like you will have
Yes, yeah,
to again.
problem with such stuff, since like I already have this thought too much. Problem is the stuff is that the rotation mechanism of the sequencers and who exactly will be sequencing your transactions, because like we got a lot of criticism for like starting with 3 sequencers ourselves. So then we started to like giving the sequencers to third parties like OKX, Binance, like VCs and stuff. So you will definitely have this like backlash for like essentially you are centralizing it at first, for sure. But then the problem will be like to make other businesses to like run your stuff for like keeping your network decentralized. So yeah, that's the headache you will be facing for sure. Because
Yeah,
we
also
already-
reimbursing people. I think this is gonna be a big headache. How do you actually make this work crypto economics wise? Like how much of the fee goes to providing ZKPs? How much does it goes to the execution, and how much to the sequencing ABS? I think this is a hard problem to make a well-informed choice there. So
For
maybe
sure,
you
yeah.
need to experiment.
Is there any reason why?
Not at cost of users for sure.
Is there any reason why you're not running the sequencing inside the TE as well? Like for example, Flashbots is kind of like time to do now.
Yeah, the reason is that we don't want the guy who's able to read the block.
No, still separate. Still separate.
Could be two separate networks. Still.
Oh, okay. Why not put this into another TE? Oh, just to increase the decentralization outlook, to not have this requirement. So in our case, we're actually using, like for starters, first vendor is Intel TDX, and those machines are kind of hard to come by, and they're quite costly and so on. So we don't want to limit the target audience for operators of this ABS.
I'm curious about the rest of the slides.
Yeah, I was exaggerating with the 17, but okay, let us maybe continue with the rest of the flow, and yeah. Then if you guys have questions, yeah.
Yes, since we are at point 5, maybe you can explain the execute block part.
Exactly. So what this means is they take those sequence. So now we are in a TE. The TE is able to read also the encrypted fields, such as the direction of the swap. And so they are able to actually apply the state transition function to those plaintext inputs and either like revert some of that, but for sure come up with a new state. This is what we mean
We're
by
talking
execute.
about EVM or something else.
Exactly. We are talking, so in T1's case specifically, we are using Reth for like a modularized version of Reth, and
But-
the idea is to expose the functionality I was talking about of looking at Arbitrum or sending stuff to scroll as a precompiler.
And but it's not standard JSON RPC, or is it?
Which
Because
one?
it needs to be encrypted in point 2.
Yeah. Yeah. So this indeed is a custom, like expanded version of the JSON RPC, but we try to be as close as possible because the default is you send a non-encrypted transaction, and then you can use this remain backwards compatible.
I wonder if it would make sense send to someone for encryption, that some to sequencing and then to execution.
Well,
Is it
encryption
sim-
is kind of easy, right? It's like
No, just to
bits.
keep it standardized. Anyway,
yeah. Then we need ZK, right? So
Well,
anyway. You execute the block, you come up with a new state root, and this new state root, you will try to convince this guy, the L1 canonical bridge, of the validity of. And you will do it according to the previous defense at depth approach, which is you will tell it, hey, this is the new state root. You will tell it, hey, this is how I got it sequenced. This is an aggregate VLS signature from these many guys. And this is the execution consensus from the TEE workers. Again, a BLS aggregate from these participants that will allow anyone, once this gets accepted, to say, hey, but this guy lied, give me his 1B. And finally, you will be putting the transaction data on Ethereum as DA. And then it might happen that this guy here rejects the new state and says, hey, I am running independent accounting from you, and I no longer feel comfortable with the current knowledge about the stake and what I feel is at value, so I will not accept it until someone gives me a zkP.
Sorry, did I publish the block eventually or not?
Executors publish blocks
And so
To-
how often
to
do you
blocks.
publish the block?
every 12 seconds. So a necessary,
Assuming you have enough money to.
of course, yeah. So this is a necessity for this contract, for the only contract we care about, the canonical bridge, to be convinced of the new state. If it can't see the commitments to the blobs on a blob carrying transaction, it will not accept the new state. Why? Well, because once it accepts, so let's assume either with the zkP or without, the bridge accepted the new state. It updates its internal view of what T1 is, and it's just a hash, right? But now, this is how all rollups work, right? This gives the ability for anyone, for Alice, for instance, to come to this contract with a proof in her hand, hey, you've accepted this state, and here's a Merkle Patricia try inclusion proof of my transaction that is supposed to give me 5 ETH, that leads to the state that you've accepted. And this bridge will give her 5 ETH instantly. No reverse possible. Like, this is hard finality. That's why we care so much about only ever accepting a state once all of the checks are positive.
So is there a little bit of a devil in the details about when AVS budget exceeded here? Because
Yeah.
it's easy, like I'm doing my withdrawals here, because if I'm downloading, let's say 500 CryptoKitties or something,
Yeah.
how do you measure that?
Yeah, that's a hard question indeed, yes. So it's kind of trivial for things like ETH or USDC, right? You can easily keep the accounting there for. But for NFTs, you need to roll with some sort of heuristics or rely on oracles. And it's also, like, specifically for NFTs, like, you kind of have this intrinsic situation that an NFT is non-fungible, and so an insurance can never get you your NFT back. Like, it can give you an infinite amount of ETH, but your NFT is stolen forever. So yeah, like, this does come with caveats. And it's actually worse than that, because it's not just withdrawals that you would, like, ideally, in an ideal world, count and use as a trigger condition for requiring a zkP, but it's also off-chain transactions. Like, maybe this Eve, and Eve has ETH on T1, and she wants to buy a yacht. So she from Alice, who is also on T1. Like, she can send those ETH to Alice. Alice gives her the yacht. Eve sails away to the sunset, and in the meantime, Eve corrupts the AVS, which has no idea about this yacht, like, intrinsically, no idea about this yacht having been part of this new state, that this transaction never happened. So she will have kind of gotten the yacht for free, because you have this, like, off-chain, like, real world asset situation. So ideally you would take that into consideration as well somehow. And practically what you would do is Alice would not give the yacht until her full node running Ethereum 12 seconds later says, yeah, this is okay.
So it basically bends down to social consensus because people will withdraw before they get uncomfortable.
Exactly. Like there's one thing. The alternative, of course, is Alice runs a T1 full node, and she will like a T1 execution full node. So she will find out about cheating as well. Yeah. So yeah, correct. It's kind of tricky to find out when to require the zkP. And also, yeah, like the problem with zkP is it takes a long time, but this is under continuous generation conditions. Like Scroll is paying 100K or something every few days just in zkP generation and verification, but this is where they are doing it every hour. Now, if you don't do it for half a day or for 1 week, to then come up with the zkP on the spot, like this grows linearly in your input. That's the problem on the prover side.
Yeah, that's why hybrid rollups exist. So you can use optimistic stuff for this part of the problem, I guess.
Yeah, I guess AVS is kind of like an optimistic thing here, but my approach would be no. Let us have a market that incentivizes the submission of a zkP periodically, even though we are far away from exceeding the security budget. Just so as to make it feasible that someone be able to come up with a zkP in a matter of 2 hours rather than 2 weeks. If like, for instance, the market moves a lot and many people transact all of a sudden.
Sorry, so I understand that this zkP is confirming that the state transition is correct,
Exactly.
but what the bespoke part means here?
Bespoke means it's not required on every step, on
Okay.
every L1 update.
Okay.
And who orders this zkP? Who
Oh, it's
requires the
The
zkP?
contract, the L1 contract.
Uh-huh.
So it has to be an off-chain. It can't be anyone on this T1, untrusted T1 books, right? It has to be the foundational. Like this is kind of bad as well, right? Because it means it's going to be costly to be running the accounting because it needs to.
But like the L1 contract has no idea about the value of transactions, right?
Well, it depends. If it, for instance, disburses those withdrawal requests, it knows. So it cannot know by default how many withdrawal transactions are contained in a new suggested state route, right? But it can, at the very least, the most naive approach would be keep track of how many people withdrew funds.
But the number of people and like the size of withdrawals.
Yeah, the size,
But
Yeah.
like if like the transactions are encrypted, then yeah, how do you want to inform the L1 about the
Because they are only encrypted up until this point. Here they get decrypted, and decrypted, like plain text block data, goes into the public.
okay, got it. So it's like so it's also like an arrow from Ethereum back to execution AVS to request the zkP, and then like the zkP comes back.
Yeah. So yeah, like technically the zkP generator might be any third party.
Mhm.
They don't need to be a T. They can, like you said, hopefully they are running a full node, so they have blocks, and they just restore the state.
When the budget of all transactions within this zkP is exceeded, then we can request this zkP, right? Or
Yeah, well, ideally earlier,
okay.
so that the system doesn't need to halt, doesn't need to stop finalizing.
Okay.
Will you talk about syncing many L2s?
Yeah, here, look, partner averages. Well, this is kind of, you get it kind of for free in this construction, and with one big caveat that I wonder whether Carsten is going to point out. Imagine you have this TE, that has this AVS that comes to consensus or to a conclusion about the new state root. You can add precompiles that are basically that made deterministic, non-deterministic calls into the outside world. It may be a call into a sex API, but it may also just be an RPC call into an Arbitrum file running beside you. As long as you make sure it is expected under the happy path to behave deterministically, which you can. And then you make this part of what both the TEE attests to and the AVS people vote on when they come to decide whether they sign off on a given new state root.
Shouldn't your execution AVS only be evaluating based on the data that the other rollups have posted to DA?
Yeah, this is the problem. Yeah, you spotted it. So the problem is rollups can roll back, rollups can revert, rollups can have a reorg. And so in reality, you only know what the state of Arbitrum in a given block is after the DA for the sequence transactions has finalized, not just been possible, finalized, so that's 30 minutes, on Ethereum. And until then, you have a risk that the sequencer reorgs, like rolls back the chain and posts something else to Ethereum. So yeah, this is one risk, and this is basically, like, this can be tackled via some sort of insurance, again, like a rollback insurance, especially under the assumption that at least whilst Arbitrum and Co are centralized, there's no like malice intention with the sequencer. It's gonna be way harder if they ever do manage to decentralize the sequencing. And then the other problem, oh, what was the other one? I forgot now. Yeah, like that's one big problem indeed, yes.
But it wouldn't be such a huge problem if, let's say, the sequencing was part of a confirmation layer, right? Let's say it's for this particular case, where basically you're kind of ensured confirmation involved, right?
Yeah. So, like, the other workaround for this situation is you only allow devs to fetch the latest Ethereum DA finalized block from Arbitrum.
And wait 12 minutes, which nobody likes.
And this, oh yeah, I remember now. The other problem with this is, well, you are running Arbitrum full nodes. They produce 5 blocks a second. And they have, I don't know how many zeros in the block gas limit. Like, this requires a lot of hardware and a lot of bandwidth and so on. So what I expect in practice is that there'd be many, I think there's actually space for a new startup, just for this. Like a TE AVS Oracle about a rollup state, about like other rollup state, where you get where you pay some extra to like use or transact with such partner rollup that may be used to reimburse people where a rollback happens and there's like money lost.
So how many blocks do you need to send funds from Optimism to Arbitrum here in this design?
In this design, it depends on these choices, specifically on finality.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want it to be safe, you would need to wait for Arbitrum like for the one you read from, for the sequencer to have posted blob carrying data, blob carrying transactions with the sequence data to L1, and then you need to wait for the L1 for that block to finalize. So 30 minutes happy case, infinite like unhappy case. And then once you have that, you call this other precompile that behind the scenes calls an RPC of your Optimism full node. And then if you want to be sure about the transaction made it, you would do the same for the Optimism new state, right? You want to be sure that your transaction that did not revert was properly finalized as per the sequencer on L1. So like the safe case, 26 minutes.
Some zk rollups or most zk rollups, they post zk proofs like every hour for zk sync. So then you have to wait an hour, like.
Yeah.
uh,
Well, it comes with many caveats. Like, for instance, zkSync has a 23-hour execution delay, just in case there's a bug in the zk.
Okay.
They give themselves like that time to actually revert an already posted and accepted new state. And yeah, every zk rollup has some sort of fallbacks like this current.
So you do better work for optimistic rollups because of.
No, well, it doesn't matter. It's the same. What we discussed with optimism and acknowledgement is the same for zk rollups, right? You want to be so this is why people are bullish on base rollups and precons and stuff and shared sequencing, because you work around this thing. It's about what gets sequenced. And yeah, like there's even more like caveats. With zkSync again, so they apply a state diff approach where it's kind of hard to know whether a given state diff that is finalized on the L1 will not result in an invalid new state. Like from the perspective of the L1, you can't know that. This is easier when you post full data like strong, because you know for sure. Like you can define your rollup in a way that if you have full data, if it's an invalid transaction or whatnot, it's a no op, and it still results in a valid new state.
Are you planning to add something in case your zkP system is broken as well?
Yeah, I mean, ideally we have multi-vendors for the TEE that makes things harder with quorums. And ideally we have a multi-prover for the zkP, like, because that doesn't actually add to latency, right? That's the beauty of it. If you run this one zkP generation and this one in parallel, you still have the same delay. You have twice the cost, but you have the same delay. And then probably some sort of security council or some ideally third CK system. This seems like it's unfortunately still far away. Especially if you want the code bases to actually be disjoint. For the likelihood that one ZK system be bug-free to not depend on the other
You
being.
just run ref inside risk0 NSP1 and you call it redundancy.
Exactly. that's the risk. Okay. If you guys, so where are we now? We have a DevNet, and we actually have a TDEX running, like a special DEX that takes advantage of these features running in the DevNet. It's built by Coca Labs, and I think I have a little demo of that, like a recorded demo. So I can show you that if you're interested, unless you have some more questions. Okay, so I would have wanted to show the real demo, but I'm just gonna go with backup because it's it's a bit problematic right now.
Hi.
So let's do this. Yeah, so on the left you can see the DEX that runs an FBA, which is frequent batch auction, that relies on this encrypted mempool. And you can see the co-founder has just submitted a limit order. So these two fields might be the fields that you use as a partially encrypted input to the sequencer. And what you can see is the order book, which you usually wouldn't be able to build on an L1 because it's expensive, but you can on an L2. But it has in this L2 this special property that it does not just work like an order book in Binance, where the first order that is able to consume the counterpart gets matched. Instead, it has this deliberate delay of 1 second, where you wait for many such sealed bids, we call them, like hidden bids with respect to how much you're willing to pay for some asset, and we only resolve those auctions after such a 1 second slot is over. Like this is one thing that is enabled by this encrypted element, and this seems to result in more attractive spreads. From our data, we are told we'd be looking at 4 times tighter spreads than in a non FBA situation. And then once this, I think this is the order that was submitted, match orders, and this is an L1 Explorer. This is like make-believe Ethereum, where you see just a few seconds after the order was submitted, the new state of the world is accepted. The new state root of the T1 state is accepted, upon the acceptance of which this guy who transacted on T1 can just create this Merkle Patricia tri-inclusion proof and withdraw the funds literally within up to 12 seconds, so 6 seconds on average on Ethereum L1. This is basically the idea.
Who matches the trade here? This ABS with TEs?
So in this case, this is an early DevNet of ours. So this is actually all running in one single TE. This is just for demo purposes. So this a market maker who is submitting these bid-ask limit orders that make it, once they are not matched as part of the FBA, they make it into a publicly visible order book. And so they're continuously feeding them in via WebSocket, the retail user uses some front end like this to put in his, and there's a worker, like there's some off-chain service that looks at orders, and if they are able, and once per second in this situation, matches them. Like tries to match them, and it's actually matched via the second highest bid. This seems for some reason to result in the best execution rates.
Like the whole block and the result of matches is hidden till the block is published, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
how would you compare it to Suave TE execution?
Suave.
Yeah, from Flashbots.
Yeah, this is a similar approach actually. I think Suave specifically, they focus a lot on block building and not on an application piece of infra. We focus very much on infra, and this is actually a third party who built this DEX. This just happens to be the first use case for us. That's why I'm showing it. And I also think it makes a lot of sense. We wanted to build the DEX ourselves first. But this is where I think the difference lies. I don't know if Michał agrees though. Any more questions?
How do you think it will result in solver's monopoly? Because like most of the DEX orders are still executed with like regular on-chain aggregation. And on those like 1inch infusion, co-swap, there are like monopolar solvers who solve most of the incoming traffic, and they're also heavily incentivized by the 1inch, by co-swaps. They get a lot of like rewards, incentives, because their margin is very low because it's very competitive.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas how to make it more profitable for those solvers to attract them to the platform, at least for initial like go-to-market?
Yeah, so I'm not the DeFi guy, but my understanding is an FBA as model on its own has this very property that disincentivizes those big, very sophisticated participants who compete on latency and incentivize people who compete on price. So I think, and you can think about it, if you have 1 second to come up with some bid, and it's not the first bid that consumes the other bid, but it's actually a uniform price auction. It seems like intuitively, at least, that this be less of a centralizing force. Because you don't need to have this like infra so badly. I think you still, of course, need the liquidity. Like that's still a big centralizing force for solvers or for market makers. But it feels like it should be less. I don't know if anyone else is a DeFi expert, maybe, who can weigh in on this. Any more questions?
Can I go slightly back to the T1 rollup?
Sure.
Maybe a newbie question, which you have already covered multiple times, but how do you compare it to based rollups?
Oh yeah. Well, so based rollups are a category that talks about sequencing, how you sequence your transactions, right? For T1, the sequencing is
ABS.
the sequencing exactly is this ABS that we've seen before over here. And we are actually considering becoming a basedly sequence rollup. And the main problem with base rollups for me is it seems to require quite a lot of politicking, like political buy-in work for the effects to become attractive, like to the network effects. But maybe it happens, and then it might make sense for us to become based as well. And this is kind of Justin's big hope and vision that most rollups, by the time a certain critical mass is reached, can upgrade again in an easily compatible, backwards compatible way to base sequencing.
I guess you choose eigenlayer ABSs?
This is our current partner. Yeah.
Is there like some specific reason why not like symbiotic?
Well, ABS seems to be the furthest. It's just that, have you looked into symbiotic? How far? Like especially on slashing end, how far along they are there?
Not that far. I mean, not. I guess there's a very long road to go. So there's no one that is far.
Yeah.
Too much further, I guess.
How far along would you say symbiotic is with respect to Eigen?
We value there like some partnerships and how they treat developers, and seems to be more comfortable for developers.
Yeah. For like compound, you mean for like T1 kind of developers? Like users.
Yeah. No, like developers, like
partners.
those who build their ABSs.
Mm.
In Symbiotic they're called different, some networks. That's some high-level overviews that we got.
Yeah. Okay. Are you going with Symbiotic? Alright, I'd love to pick up your brain later as well.
Is Symbiotic on mainnet?
Are they?
There been some services running, but we will like learn through the docs, not much on using the actual running services.
And one obviously big advantage of going with eigenlayers, you literally, if you go to the app, you see like some random ABSs you never heard of have 1B of free stake.
Yeah.
And I think
it will be all dead when slashing is involved.
Exactly. Well, when slashing is involved, but also it seems like now they require operators to select exactly one ABS.
So
I think because of attributability, which is this is not good. This is gonna make for the
it will
zkWarsaw.
kill many ABSs
Right.
that don't provide value.
Right.
Maybe it's better.
Do you feel that's a necessity? Like, do you know if that's a fundamental necessity for attributability for the operator to have to pick just one ABS rather than many? Or is this just an
I'm feeling more secure with that. But I'm not sure it's like this.
have they decided on it already? Because I think
Yeah.
that we are.
It
Okay.
doesn't sound correct to my ears at least, because it's you're not, let's say, the value right now, you're selecting how much slashable state you're making available. But as far as I remember, they don't restrict you on it.
I think it's not live yet, but they announced it I think 2 months ago. This
Yeah, but
update.
that's a little more complex than just from ABS for one operator.
No, yeah, of course, it's more like
Yeah, so
one
like,
operator for one ETH for the state, right?
that might be a different thing, but like in terms of like slashable budget, I think that's kind of a topic here. Like, because that's the amount of stuff that you have available as restaked value, right? But then there's also kind of a little bit like a percentage of how much you want to actually expose yourself. But of course, like without slashing, everybody's happy at the moment, right? So
Why do you feel more comfortable with the single AVS? For OPSEC reasons or for stake dilution reasons?
No, not to have like the same ETH restaken like in multiple times in various.
It's a kind of leverage.
Isn't that kind of the idea though?
it is.
Any more questions? One more
Can I wonder what's your overall perspective on rollups and the L2s market? There's been a popular thesis on Twitter that OP stack is like pump.fun but for rollups and L2s. Yeah, what do you think?
I'm not an expert on OP. I don't have an opinion.
On rollups and L2s, I mean, there are like a lot of rollups, and I believe dozens more are going to come, like exponentially more, and it's like a fierce competition which creates fragmented liquidity. So if you have any idea, like, or some perspective where the market is gonna end with it.
Well, I very much hope Vitalik's vision is gonna realize, which is if you are not a stage 2 rollup, which is no one, no one's gonna care about you, and no one's gonna there's gonna be like this education level at some point that this is like an insecure rollup and this is a secure rollup. I don't know how long it takes to get there. Like OP has optimism has just become stage 1 like a few months ago. So these things seem to take a long time. And yeah, base and blast are still stages, you know.
And the users don't seem to care.
Yeah, maybe they will at some point.
Yeah.
I guess there's some cool players in the space like L2B that threaten to like no longer order by TVL, but first by stage and then by TVL. And like I think there's some momentum building up and some annoyance. Like you get, like you said, like when you launch with 3 sequencers, you get bad press. Like that's already a sign of a maybe maturing market. In that respect, like it's bad for us, of course, but I think for the ecosystem it's good. So maybe there's some.
See, in regards of this like security assumptions, if you're familiar with zkWarsaw, what they do, they implemented this like sequencer where
AI?
security stuff. So basically they monitoring the mempool with AI, and if somebody does something weird with like there's the liquidity pools, it basically kills the transactions or like stops it.
So it's censorship.
Yeah.
Centralized
it is.
censorship.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, see,
Well, that's what Zircuit marketed themselves.
I've been in this space like way too much. So like I feel like this is like correct solution, honestly.
Great.
Yeah, this is correct because like honestly everyone talks about like decentralization and like blah 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 with decentralized until they lose money. And once you lose money, you will be like, okay, fuck, I will probably have to like get my contracts monitored. So that's we are considering now at Matis, I guess. Like we have conflicting opinions on this, but like in my opinion, if you are like a DApp provider and you have like this basically DApp deployed with like user funds on our chain, you have the right to like get your contract monitored for suspicious activity because well it's your contract and you have like rights to get it censored, I guess. So yeah, because See, in our chain, we had like probably 2 or 3 like instances of dApps basically killing lots of like liquidity and like.
What do you mean?
So basically, so what happens? We were promoting our dApps on like our Twitter, socials, blah blah blah, and people like come to these dApps and deposit money there. And one day, like the dApp gets hacked, and users get fucked. And we feel like, oh, so we are responsible for this. So we like get some reimbursement for the users to keep our faces.
Maybe
faces, yeah.
I think that's the beauty of the rollup scaling roadmap, that you can have an L2 that sensors and it's a USB, and an L2 that is decentralized.
See,
Maybe it's
like,
fine.
there is a middle ground for this, I think. So what zkWarsaw did, they wanted to say, okay, we get this like sequencer, mempool, monitoring stuff, so your money is safe, but it is not as permissionless, right? But like we are thinking like to doing like kinda softly. So for example, we have Aave deployed, right? And we can allow them to get their contracts like monitored on the mempool level, so they don't lose money. Therefore, our users don't lose money. Therefore, our files are safe. So like this.
There are solutions that provide real-time
Yeah.
on-chain
Yeah.
hack prevention.
Yeah. Basically, they monitor the liquidity balancing, right? If the hacker uses some flash loans or like weird math, and like they execute the transaction, and this transaction like brings like huge imbalance into the pool, this transaction gets stopped, and that's it. And then they run some kind of governance whether this transaction is legitimate or whatever.
I understand that this works as long as you don't have this private order flows to sequencers, right?
Yes, if it's see, like every chain is sort of different. Like Metis has like decentralized sequencer. We have like 9, I guess. So like we control 3 as foundation, and 6 is like other companies basically. We have OKX, we have I think Binance, we have some universities, I think. So we basically try to like get as much like operators as possible that like reputable, and yeah, and then we sort of decide with them on things. So yeah, asking a question. No.
Guys, the pizza is here, we have drinks.
Okay.
Thank you so much for this. Let us move into the less formal part.
Thank you.